All right. So welcome back to the party, everybody. So happy to have you. Again, I cannot believe your commitment. Like 8 o'clock, and there is 91 of you, and hopefully we'll rock 100. Blows my mind. Hats off to the coordinators and the folks who put the conference together, and those of you who being here. It is highly impressive. So we are going to go to, I am going to make sure I have the right PowerPoint up for you guys. We're going to part 2 of today's conversation. And this is what I get super excited about, because yes, we have to talk about where it all begins, but I just love talking about all the different ways that we can make it a little better. Oh, part 2, here we go. So we're gonna go slide, and we are gonna go play from the start. So, hey, I'm still Kim Laube. That didn't change since last workshop. I still run all of these things. This makes us look like we're really big. We really have a staff of 5, and our operating budget isn't even $500,000. So although we have a lot of things, we are a tiny organization. I still love prevention. That didn't change. But I want to talk about moving to wellness. And we have to start with acknowledging that we are fighting a pandemic. Oh, and by the way, we're dealing with COVID-19 as well. Oftentimes we talk about like the pandemic is only COVID-19. No, we've been dealing with an addiction pandemic for a very, very long time. Here's what I know. The resilient ones, the long gamers, the leaders that lead, we're all starting to fatigue. We've been doing this for a while. We dressed up, we showed up, we did our job, and now we're just tired. And so that is important for us to realize. It's kind of like we don't even realize how much pain we're in. You ever go for like a massage, and all of a sudden they hit a spot and you're like, ow, that hurt. But you didn't realize it hurt until they touched that. That's kind of where we are right now. We don't realize how much pain we are holding in our body from all that we have walked through over the last, 18, 19, 28,000 months, however we've been there. And our recovery community was rocked, right? Because we know one of the most important things about recovery is being in space together, sharing our stories, sharing and connecting. And it certainly did not happen. And the fallout, the mental health, the SUD fallout, we haven't even begun to kind of intersect it. It hasn't hit its peak, and we haven't gotten to where we need to get to. And what's really important is we recognize that we must sing the song we need to hear the most. And that song has to all be about healing, whatever way, shape, or form it is that we do it. So check this out. COVID-19, you start hearing about it. Oh, it was happening in Italy. It was happening in different places. It wasn't happening here, and really wasn't a concern for us. And so we really didn't necessarily pay attention to it. Some of us might have, but for the most part, we were not thinking it was going to rock us. And then we had this kind of concern building that was starting to happen, and hearing about a shutdown. And I don't know about you, but how many of you remember the exact place you were in the exact moment when you realized that we were going to shut down things for a short amount of time? I was in Albany advocating with ASAP, and sitting right across, we went to a diner, and we were watching people kind of scurry, almost the way that they do before a snowstorm. And they started to kind of like frantically get to where they were getting to, and that eerie quietness began to settle in. And I remember thinking, just like many of you, it was just going to be 2 weeks, wasn't it? It was only going to be 2 weeks that we were all going to stay. And then that 2 weeks became 2 months, and that became a year. And now we're almost up to 2 years. And so panic and fear sets in, because we're human. That's what happens. Panic and fear sets in. And so panic and fear sits in, and we only get the essentials. We only, and this gets summed up by 2 words, toilet paper, right? Like suddenly we're in America, like toilet paper is the big story of the day that we can't get. And so then we learned to adapt really quick. We learned how to kind of find this new way of doing things, new way of working with Zoom. By the way, we always had Zoom. Zoom's been around we just didn't utilize it. We underutilized the tools. And so we found out that how to shop online and how to order food online. And suddenly restaurants learned how to do takeout or set their systems up so that there was the most amount of social distancing that could happen. And so we redesigned things and we created new skills and we learned to do things a little bit different. Schools went hybrid. Sporting events became quite the challenge and didn't happen for a long time, but then started to happen if you presented that you had a negative test. And so all of that was great until like we had to start doing it all over again. And now we're kind of like in that round two of wondering about how bad Delta is going to be. And so all of this began to build, and that led us to this place that we're in now, the place of the Great Resignation, the place where people are retiring and leaving and rethinking their world. And that led us to people questioning how we're living our lives and how addicted to being busy we were. I'm so busy. I'm just so busy. It almost became this competition of who was the busiest person in the room. And so people began to question why they were so busy and if this was really the way they wanted to live their life. And then we had the Great Migration. People moved all over. How many of you had friends that moved? How many of you had people move into your community? I mean, we live on the east end of Long Island where everybody goes back to their lives. In September, they go back to the city. They stayed. They didn't leave. Our school census increased and we weren't able to handle the amount of work that needed to be done. And then we hit our own workforce crisis in our field. People, you can't hire people and get them into our jobs, and people are leaving and jumping from agency to agency. And by the way, I have 2 positions open in mine if anybody's interested and wants to come live down on Long Island. And so the pandemic hits, and this is what I wanted to do. This is the only thing I wanted to do. I wanted to sit there and just be a sloth and figure out what I could binge watch on Netflix. And by the way, it wasn't that I wanted to eat this healthy leaf. This was the only thing I wanted, right? This is not an endorsement for Ben and Jerry's at all, but I just wanted to sit and eat. But the thing is, I know how to lead. And so leaders lead. And so we get called into action. And sometimes we don't even get a chance to stop and think the building is burning. We just go in, what can we do? And some of you know immediately, like I threw out a net and said, anybody who on Thursdays wants to get together and just talk about how we're navigating this new space, jump on my Zoom. And so those were some of the things we began to do. So dun, 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 crisis girl is here, right? And I love the role of crisis girl, except for generally 72 hours after any major crisis, I fall apart. And so it's really important for us to learn how to self-care. And so we went from this place of isolation right back to being busy and trying to multitask. How many of you all know that this is what you do? You've got a laptop you're working on. You've got the Zoom you're supposed to be locked in, paying attention to. You've got a book on parenting, on how to be the best parent. Your cell phone's right away. You probably have a shopping list. And here's the thing about multitasking: it's overrated. And we really can't do it, although we'd love to talk about and think that we can. The truth is we really can't. And so we're never really where our feet are nowadays. We're actually all over the place and our brains are trying to focus everywhere. And so again, like there's some certificate in the end for being the busiest person in the world. And by the way, if you need one of those to validate how hard you're working, I will gladly send you that certificate. And when we move to this isolation place, we miss the opportunity to connect with our colleagues, to talk around the water cooler about what theme you were going to make your 2-year-old's birthday party, and all those soft things that keep us connected and keep us human in our work, and not just being a human doing, but in fact, being a human being. We miss talking about games. And by the way, we stopped commuting. And so therefore, we were never shifting our brain. We'd go right from our work brain right into our home brain. We didn't have that chance to use our commute to connect with people, or to listen to music, or to do stuff just to shift our energy from being the worker to being a family member, a spouse, a partner, a cat's mom, whatever it is, the role that we have at the end of the day. And so I encourage you, if you still are working from home, find your commute. Figure out how you can go take a ride around the block or a walk around the block and just give yourself a break. Give that brain just a minute to slow down so you can connect to your heart and be with people in a very different way. And so we did a good job. We adapted our technology in a short amount of time. We figured out how to use our home space and share our family with so many others. We had to learn Zoom etiquette. We had to learn from going, you're on mute, you're on, to please put yourself on mute, please put yourself on mute, to you're on mute, you're on mute. We got locked into this square world of just looking at little tiny pictures like the Brady Bunch of people. We struggled to be present. We missed that transition time. For some reason, we thought, because now we live on Zoom, that you could have a 1 o'clock meeting. Of course, you can have a 2 o'clock meeting, and of course, have a 3 o'clock meeting. And we booked ourselves back to back to back to back with no break in between. If we were meeting live with people, we would have a commute. We would be like, no, I can't get there till 2:30. But we began this overbooking process that began to burn us out. In some ways, we saw this increased attendance at meetings, which was fantastic. And some of our parents actually started to show up more because they felt less judged on Zoom for coming to your informational session. And then we got stuck with, do I really look like that? Do I sound like that? Oh, why do I make that crunchy face, right? For me, I had to deal with the fact of every time I wasn't talking, man, I look like the angry aunt at the party yelling at the kids for dancing too close or drinking, right? And so we got this instant feedback of what we sound, and it's not natural. It's not the way that our brains and how we've worked up until then. And how many of us miss a good old-fashioned phone call? Just get on the phone and talk to me so that I can move around, so I can lounge while we're talking on the phone, and I don't stay locked into this box. Hey, Tiffany, I love the way you just mimicked me when I lounged back. That was great. Thanks so much. So I don't just think this is an issue. Stanford studied it and they found it to be true. And Zoom fatigue is a legit thing. That's why you're so tired at the end of the day. That's why your eyes hurt. And if you're a presenter, you're going to find that you're more fatigued after giving a presentation on Zoom than I did when I gave it in person, because I'm trying to read you in a very different way. I'm trying to connect with you, and yes, even make eye contact with you in a Zoom format. I want to feel my audiences there and I want to be with you. And so it really became a fatiguing thing to try and have all this up close eye contact. As a matter of fact, they said it would kind of be like Zoom experience if I was giving a presentation and I had 20 people just come stand right up front. How uncomfortable would those 20 people feel? Well, that's exactly what the Zoom experience is. You're all become part of the presentation, which is just different. The reduced mobility of just sitting right here and not moving around and turning and listening to the person who is talking, just this constant locked into a box. And our cognitive overload was higher. And so, yeah, we got wiped out from this. And even the strongest need a moment, because even the strongest got beat up in this process. And well-meaning people will tell us, and they'll put up on their social media. Every time I see this, I get so annoyed. You can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. I know. Or then they'll put this up. Put your oxygen mask on first and take care of yourself. I know. I know. But here's the thing is we know we're going to be immensely needed, and we know we need to self-care. We know that. We know. But the truth is it's not realistic for us to be in this process of self-care regularly. It's not feasible to keep that oxygen mask on all the time. But what we can do, Captain Obvious, is we can grab that oxygen mask, take some deep breaths, and go back in. And that's what we're going to need to do in this work. The work isn't necessarily going to get easier, and it's going to need you to be resilient. And yep, if you choose to leave the field, we honor you in your choice. But the truth is, it's going to be a lot. But it's also a great time of innovation and how we do our work differently, and challenge and resilience. And we can have a lot of fun with this and get into our best selves in our work. And yeah, maybe do our work even healthier than we did before. And we get to do that together. And so here's why I talk about self-care, because I'm awful at it. And I work at, my self-care is going to a football game and yelling my head off. That's how I self-care and release some stress. And I'm gonna try with the best of them to just, I'm lying in a tub and I do the visualization. I see that picture. I'm in a clawfoot tub. I feel the cool water. I smell the jasmine. I'm outdoors. I hear the crickets. Oh, bugs. There's bugs. I'm outdoors. There's bugs. And all of a sudden, my moment of visualization goes out the door. And instead of being in that moment, suddenly I start thinking about Ethel and Lucy and how when they were in the shower and it got filled up with water. So the bubble baths and TED Talks are great. And that may be your self-care. Your self-care may also be saying, you know what, I'm not going with my family on Thanksgiving because that's an environment I don't want to spend time in. It may be about setting boundaries. It may be about just doing one simple thing a day. There are so many ways we could approach self-care. And self-care could be all about emotional intelligence, which we're going to chat about. So don't judge yourself on what your self-care looks like. I will challenge you to say, now is the time where we actually begin to do that self-care work if you haven't done it already. Not just teach it, but to do it yourself. And part of that is because we have a broken measuring stick. People say all the time, I don't think I'm going through this pandemic well. And I'm like, really? Like, as compared to the last pandemic we walked through, why we beat ourselves up about how we're walking through this time when we've never walked through this time before collectively as a group. We've never done it before. And so if you're here listening to me, you're doing great. That's what you're doing. Take that broken measuring stick and throw it out. This is not a time for you to tell yourself you're not enough. I have had moments throughout this pandemic where I was like the resilient warrior and I took great stuff on and had great breakthrough moments. And I've had moments in this pandemic where I was in fetal position crying and releasing all the stress that I've taken on. And I find that when I listen to my peers, they have very much the same experience. What I worry about is those of us who aren't talking about it. I do worry about that suicide rate. I do worry about our field. And I do worry about those of us in recovery, because this is the heaviest thing to pick up when you're hurting. And it's so important that we create that safe space for one another to be like, oh man, my coping mechanisms are pretty dangerous right now, and I'm not dealing well. And finding ways where we can honestly and authentically talk about it and not feel judged. And we are in such a tough field for that to take place. But the numbers aren't going in the right direction. 93,000 people died of a drug overdose. We were doing really good with that for quite some time. It's the highest number of overdose deaths that we've seen since 1999, the highest increase. And we have to talk about our 34-year-old population, because they were definitely seeing the most overdoses between 35 and 44 years old of age. And so that came from Dr. Nora Volkoff. And some of that had to do with what happened to our recovery community, because if you paid attention to our recovery community, they were going to a lot of funerals long before COVID-19. And they were in a process of grief and sustained loss. Yeah, the online meetings, they became great, but they were triggers for some people in a different way. And check this out. When I would go into a meeting and I was kind of not feeling good and somebody said, hey, Kim, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm all right. They'll be like, meet me at the diner after the meeting. You're not all right. And we lost that ability with the online community to be able to talk with people beforehand and talk with people afterward and just read whether or not they needed us to throw them a lifeline. Folks who needed to be on medically assisted treatment didn't have access to their treatment, or they were overprescribed it, but they were not getting the face-to-face counseling on it. We saw relapse and overdose hit in a major, major way. And of course, this is what happened to our kids. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I think I've shown that video 6 times this week alone in all the presentations I've done. And it still chokes me up because I can not only worry about all the Liv McNeils that are out there that have all walked through this. I know I worry about myself and my peers for the same exact reason. See, when we talked about stress in the ACEs study, we talked about positive stress, which, is going for a driver's license and taking a test. It's stuff that, we have a good outcome, but we get a little nervous about it. And then there's the tolerable stress, the dealing with a broken arm or loss of a loved one or something significant, but we learn how to kind of walk through that. But then there's that long-term toxic stress, ongoing, repeated, it continues and continues and continues. And that's where it changes the healthy development of a young person's brain. But so many of us have walked through this toxic stress time of walking through this pandemic. And many of us stayed in this survival place, right? At first, where we're just glued to the news and we're just talking about things and we're getting angry and we want our side to be right. And whether we're fighting for masks or not to wear masks, or vaccine, no vaccine, and then the whole political climate, right? I'm not really productive. I'm just kind of like staying as like a keyboard warrior, and I'm angry and I'm taking all this stuff in and I'm just worried. I just have fear, forget everything and run, or face everything and recover. And then maybe we move from that fear zone into the learning zone, where I begin to kind of take stock in the little things. I create a new routine. I'm connecting to being outdoors, and I'm starting to adapt to this new space. I've accepted it. It's here. I'm not fighting it anymore. And then hopefully I go from that learning zone to that growth zone where I'm learning to be patient with myself and others, recognizing what's in my control. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, figuring out how I can redesign who I am. And if you're human, you probably go through all three of these steps, left and right, that you go back and forth in between, because we are in fact human. That's what we are. But there were some positives that happened out of COVID-19. Some of you worked on your relationships. Some of you adopted dogs. Some of you, as a matter of fact, I want to hear what it was that you did, but here's the catch. I want you to just type it into your chat box, but don't hit enter. We're going to do what's called a positivity burst. This is a great tool if you're working with people in just a little unique way to get some energy going. I don't want you to hit enter, but I want you to type into the chat box, what were some of the cool things happening with COVID-19? What were some of the cool things going? So here's what I want you to do. Just type it in. And ready, we're going to count down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hit enter, hit enter, blow up that chat box. There you go. I love this. You know why I get so excited about this? Because this is where all the good stuff comes popping in, right? So, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm just reading somebody had a loss. I didn't see that. Right. So family time, movie nights, watching children go up, became a foster parent. Oh, Michelle, good on you. Embrace Zoom, family meetings, took time with myself, right? Being out of the office chaos. I was able to be alone and not feel guilty, right? Brilliant. More time with family, a slower life. Ooh, Josephine, you became a grandmother. I can't wait. I'm hoping that within 4 years I have that happen. Not that I'm planning. Met a guy, got engaged, became a clinical director. Jessica, you killed COVID. Good for you, girl, right? Adopted a dog. And look at all these brilliant things that happened as a result. So maybe some of you read more, or you played more, or you did things differently. Maybe your relationship strengthened, or you found your new routine, or your new relationship, or your healthcare routine changed. You made new agreements with yourself. I made the agreement with myself. I was going to go see the sunset every day. How simple is that? I was going to see the sunset every day, because yes, I still work 12, 13, 14, 15-hour days, right? But I was going to stop and go watch the sunset. Whether I went back to the office, I wasn't going to judge myself on that, but I was going to take a moment out and just be in the moment. I live a mile from the ocean, and I get into my work humanness that I missed it. So you got to choose how you spent your time, crafts, new skills, right? So thank you all for making that space better and throwing all that good stuff into the group. And what you talked about there was your resilience. You may not have realized that's what you were saying. It's where people do better than expected in spite of adversity, or you bounce back and you learn. And it's about how we're going to walk through this next time. And this next time is definitely a call to action for sure, in a variety of ways. Jackie Gibson, good for you. Actually, why do I think I've seen that, Jackie Gibson? Are we friends on Facebook? But here's what I want to know. And if we're not friends on Facebook, to all of you, come find me. This is the key word, is process. It is a process. It is not just a destination, right? It's not like you flip a switch and you're resilient. It's a process where we get to work on that process, on that muscle. And so resilience is not something you're born with. Sorry, not like it's born with it, or maybe it's Maybelline. You can tell it's the end of the day. It's not something you can buy. It's not the absence of pain or loss. It's not a quick fix, and it's not unique to any group of people. But it is, in fact, whoop, hold on, developed over time. You can cultivate it, your attitudes and skills that can be learned and practiced. And it's the universal human ability to thrive instead of setbacks. The universal, and I love that word universal is there, right? So we get to do this. Gosh, I'm loving on you guys. So everyday struggles that can bring out our resilience, everyday sudden traumas, or a course where we lose a loved one, or we have a divorce or a breakup or a betrayal or an infidelity, an injury, losing a job, being a victim of crime, disaster, or an accident. But then there's those long-term stressors, financial strain. So many people felt that. Poverty, an abusive relationship, being separated from a loved one for an extended period of time, caring for a chronically ill or troubled family member, or living with long-term mental illness, alcoholism, or SUD. And of course, COVID-19 fits that. And so we get to build our resilience, and we get to make every day meaningful and learn from our experience and remain hopeful. It's so important that we take care of ourselves and be proactive while we can. And these are just some of the tips and the skills that we can use to build our resilience. But again, it's an action word. It's about working on it regularly. And there are 7 steps, 7 C's: competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. And competence is the ability to know, yes, I've done this before. I know I can do this. And I've sharpened my iron, and I have learned the skills needed. And confidence is believing in yourself and knowing you've done that. And of course, that basic human need for connection, how important is that? And then developing a sense of who you are and with integrity, being of service to others, learning to cope, and getting a strong group around us, and developing those healthy relationships with control. And many of us struggle with our relationship with control. We either let it go, or we over control. And I am that. Anything I let go has claw marks all over it, but I am a work in progress, just like you are. And so those are those 7 C's of resilience that are so important. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell me what your power name is. I want you to think hard about it, but not too hard. What is your superpower? What is the thing that you are really, really, really good at? And that is going to be your superpower. You're going to put this on chat. You're going to put it in the paper. But what you're going to do is you're going to come up with your name, your superpower, and then you're going to follow it with Queen, King, Goddess, Lord, Master, or any other powerful word you choose. So just for example, I am Kim, the Resilience Queen, and I want you to come up with your name. And right now, I want you to take the risk, figure out what, don't even guess it. Don't let that committee start in your head saying you are not. I want you to think about what you am, what's your uber powerful word, and put it right. Misty, the Empathy Queen. Yes. Joanne, the Comeback Kid. Good on ya. Oh, Michelle, the Jesus Lover. Awesome. Joanne, you are about loving on others. Linda, the Sarcasm God. Oh, we need to hang out sometime, Linda. Right. The Recovery Rich. Oh, you guys got it. Pop them in. JK, the Boogie Queen. Oh, you got to teach me some moves. Robert, calm in the storm. Oh, Robert, we need you. We need you. Now here, you guys keep popping those in. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about what your power pose is going to be, because you got your power name. Now I want you to think about your power pose. And here I want you to see my friend Usain Bolt. That's what he did after he won. Some people have, yeah, that's me. Other people have, whoo, that's me. Then, of course, there's our soccer friends. And then, of course, Broadway. And how cool would it be to be on Broadway? When they get to the end of their shift, people clap for them. That's what they do. They clap for them. How awesome would it be that if you got to the end of your 8, 9, 10, 12, 15-hour day, people clapped for you and said, good job. So Master of juggling multiple needs and demands. That's awesome. So I want you to think about what your power pose is. And I want you to every once in a while, at least one time a day, be like, I'm Kim, I'm the resilience queen. Ooh, and get into your power and get into your power pose, whatever your power pose is. And it is totally silly, and you don't have to do it around people or in public. But when you do just one thing good a day, I want you to like applaud yourself. And I want you to say, I'm Kim, the resilience queen, or I'm Jackie, the supporting queen. And I want you to be like, yeah, that's all me. Claim your greatness, because you're the only one who can claim your greatness. And boy, are you great. Because when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. That happens to be a picture of my son, Jordan. Wow, I really give him a lot of favoritism, don't I? You can't tell in that picture if Jordan is facing the sun or facing you. And you can look at that picture all you want, and you're going to be like, nope, he's facing the sun. And then you might look at it deeper. Nope, he's facing you. And the interesting thing is, I don't even know the answer to that picture anymore because it's changed. Jordan doesn't even know the answer. So when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And this grieving process that we are in is big and it's significant, right? And there's so much of it going on. It's not just about losing individuals, but we heard in the chat about one of you who did. But it's about losing the experiences that we've lost. And there were so many different losses. And so when we really break down grief, we take a look at primary, which is the losing of an individual. But then there's that secondary, what that loss means. Then we know we've had for COVID-19 that ongoing constant loss that was happening. And we saw this after September 11th too. But then for our essential workers, and you guys are essential workers, those of you who work around the clock, there's that ambiguous loss where you didn't get to go to your friend's kid's birthday party, or you didn't have Christmas on time because you were working an 8 to 4 or 4 to 12 or a midnight. And so we see this happen with a lot of people, this ambiguous loss. But then there's that anticipatory grief. That grief of every time that phone rings, you're going to hear something bad. Kind of like we knew every time we saw an email that said, in an overabundance of caution, you knew something was canceled. And so you almost expect it to happen over and over again. And so again, we really are awful at seeking help for ourselves because stigma keeps in there, and prolonged grief disorder is real and it is there. And it is not unique to just COVID-19. And so many people will take a look at the bell curve of grief and look at loss, shock, numbness, denial, loneliness, isolation, depression. And then as we grow back up here in the healing process. But the truth is, it really isn't as clean as that, is it? It really looks like that in so many different ways. And so emotional intelligence is something that I really think is going to carry us through as we begin to build on our EQ, because oftentimes we only talk about those 4 main feelings: good, bad, happy, sad. And by the way, good and bad aren't feelings, they're judgments. They're not even feelings. But yet, can you just all appreciate this for just 1 minute? I worked like really hard to figure this out. Check out all of the different emotions there are. Ooh, look at that. You want to see that again? I get so jazzed and excited about that visual. Look, there you go. Look at all of those feelings and those emotions that are there. It's not just about the core 4. It's about all of those different feelings. And we all have all of those feelings at any given time. And so it's really important that we learn to talk about this so that we don't lose it over the broken shoelace. Or we, of course, don't lose it in traffic. Well, maybe it's okay, Kermit, to lose it when somebody's driving slow in the fast lane. Maybe that is okay. And so it's important that we recognize, as much as IQ is important, our EQ is what really determines the 75 to 80% of our success. It's our EQ, our emotional intelligence, not our IQ. And we've got to work on this job and work in this place, because 501c3s are businesses, right? We're still running a business. And so the success is about our EQ. And here's a super cool thing. Our personality gets fixed between the ages of 5 and 8. It gets locked in, right? Our IQ gets kind of set at 17, but our EQ can be developed over time. And we can build on it and keep making it bigger and bigger. And that's the awesome thing. And if you grab your cell phones right now and take a picture of this, you could take 40 questions. It's an EQ test. It's an emotional intelligence test. It lets you know where you land in the 4 different domains of interpersonal and intrapersonal. And the interesting thing is some of the questions are a close call. It depends on which part of the committee is answering the questions. I always wonder how other people would respond for us if they were taking the test. And it takes about 10 minutes. I am going to ask that you don't take the test right now, that you kind of hang in here with me until I wrap this puppy up, and then you take the test. If you can, that would be awesome, right? But when we get a good sense of our EQ, it's really important to help keep us right-sized with good information. Here's why I don't want you taking the test right now. I want you to hear this story. This is my favorite story to tell. I will figure out how to tell this story in every workshop I do, no matter what the subject matter is. So check this story out. My husband and I, well, you heard in my bio, I adopt dogs. 2 of them are from Puerto Rico. 1 is from North Carolina. Tuxedo, Tallulah, and Truffles. We thought it'd be cool to name them that. Not cool when you have to rattle all 3 of those names off. I love all 3 of them tremendously, but that black guy, that's my soul dog. That is my dog. My husband and I go to watch my youngest son play football up in Massachusetts. We leave my 26-year-old at home. The fact that my 26-year-old was still living at home is a whole other workshop, and we're not here to talk about that right now. But his job was to feed the dogs and take care of the dogs. He goes off to play his own flag football, goes and hangs out with the guys afterwards, gets a phone call from John up the road who said, John, Bob was just in here and he got one of your dogs. Zach's like, oh, give me his number. Let me call him right now. So Zach calls him and he says, hey, Bob, you got my dog? And Bob goes, yeah. He goes, Zach goes, which one? Bob goes, the white one with the red collar. Zach's like, oh, that's Tallulah. Do me a favor, Bob. My house is unlocked. Always good that I share this part of the story, right? My house is unlocked. Just go in, put Tallulah in there. The other dogs are going to be there. They're going to be so super excited to see her. They'll sniff you, but they're going to be fine. Just check them out. Then I need for you to walk through the house. Isn't this great? Walk through the house, take the dog door, put the dog door in, because the dogs are getting out of the gate somehow. So Bob's like, this is strange, but I'll do it for you. So Bob goes in, walks through the house, puts the dog door in. The other dogs are there. He takes a picture and he sends it to Zach, but Zach doesn't look at the picture for about an hour. Here's the problem. Not my dog. Not only was that not my dog, that dog had a diaper on it. Yes, that dog was white. That dog had a red collar, but that dog, in fact, was not my dog. And so it's important as we take information in, that it's important that we, in fact, make sure that it is accurate information and not just noise. And so as we wrap this puppy up, I got to talk about gratitude. People talk about my energy all the time when I present, and it's all about gratitude. And that's really the place that I come from. I should be anywhere here but talking to you based on the early parts of my childhood. I get to do this work. I get to work with you. I don't have to do it. I could have done 10,000 other things, but I get to do this work. And so when we look at creating our gratitudes, part of it comes with, we tell people to write a gratitude list. I want you to start doing that. Oftentimes we don't. We tell people to do it. And so write down 3 gratitudes a day for 21 days. Now, here's the killer. If you really want to challenge yourself and you kind of feel like you're not, it's weird doing it, send it to me, kim@hugsinc.org, right? Kim@hugsinc, because here's the cool thing. Then I get to open up my email every day. And instead of, hey, Kim, you don't have this. Hey, Kim, this is due. Hey, Kim, you didn't do right. I get all your gratitude, and what a gift it is to do that. But not only is this about me, share your gratitude with others. Write one thank you note one time a week for 52 weeks. That's 52 people whose lives are going to be positively impacted because you wrote them a thank you note. How easy is that to do? But check out where this becomes social. If at least one of those 52 people decides to do the same thing, that's 104 people who were positively impacted by writing one note a week for 52 weeks. That's something we can all do. So we can pay this thing forward and get people excited because we get to. So write 3 things you like, put it in your phone, write it on your calendar, put it in a journal. Create a gratitude jar, write down the things that you're grateful for. Whoops. Write a let go box, stuff that you can't control, write it out, let it sit in a box. Some people call that a God box. Write thank you when you're paying your bills. I know this sounds insane, right? But if you have the capability of paying bills today, write thank you when you pay it, because that person opening it on the other side, well, you just might confuse them, might you? And recognize that we get to. The picture right there is me and a guy by the name of Desi, who was a coach here on Long Island, and he died very suddenly with a very aggressive kind of cancer. And one of the things that Desi talked about was when he first got sick, he wasn't sure, how he was going to handle it. And one night he was super tired, and his daughter was like, "Hey, Dad, can you read me a story?" And he looked at his wife. He's like, "I have to go read it to her." And all of a sudden he realized, oh, I don't have to. I get to. We get this moment. That is the only thing we are guaranteed, is this moment right now. So we get to. And I promised Desi's wife and Desi's family that I will include that in all my workshops, because we get to do this work. You don't have to go to work. There are 10,000 choices you can make, but doing the job that you're doing, but you're choosing it. So choose into it in a big, bold, loud, proud way. Life happens for us. It doesn't happen to us. Life happens for us. There are 3 gifts in everything. It's up to us to figure out what those gifts are. Oh, and by the way, make your bed in the morning. Give permission to struggle with all this, because this is no place to beat yourself up. I want you to think about where you want to be a year from now and put it in your journal and write it down as if it was the absolute truth. I want to talk about whatever it is, the goal you set, like you've achieved that goal, write it down, because when we write it, it helps speak us into existence. And as I begin to wrap up, I want to just kind of talk about this old conversation we had about geese, but I've been bringing it back. See, the amazing thing about geese and that V formation, once they form it, their uplift that they create makes them 70% more effective in their work. It is about that V and working together. And that honking that you hear, that's them cheering on the leader and saying, "Hey, keep doing it. You're doing great." And when the leader up front gets tired, that leader just drops to the back and allows somebody else to take the lead. God, wouldn't it be great if we tapped out and let others take the lead sometimes? And if one goose gets sick, that goose drops out and 2 other geese stay with it until it either perishes or till it's well enough to fly again, and they rejoin a new flock. So every time you see that V formation, just think about all the lessons that we get to gain from geese. Healing is not a miracle. It is certainly a process that takes time. And I think I covered all the words that I said that I was going to cover in today's conversation. I thank you for being who you are. I thank you for this work. Please find me on social media. If you find hugs on social media, that's our staff that runs that. I will never get those messages. Feel free to find me individually and personally. You are all amazing. You are inspiring. You have made me a better human being tonight. I thank you for being here and joining in this. And I am going to turn it over for anything that it needs to be turned over for at this point.
First, that was amazing, Kim. And does anybody have any questions for Kim? Other than let's hang out sometime and do this gratitude and wellness thing together. Yes. You have a lot of amazing presentation. You fed our souls. I'm feeling recharged. It was an amazing way to end the conference. Thank you so much. So Kim, we pulled you in as the ringer to keep us going till the very end of the conference. So thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate it. My big announcements that I had at the end, everybody's wondering what those are. Don't forget to complete your evaluations before November 5th. Away SAS certificates will be available. I see a hand up. Jacqueline, I see a hand up. Go ahead. Do you want to unmute yourself? Go ahead, and then I'll do my announcements.
I wanted to ask him, how do you encourage your staff to engage in self-care so that they can keep going?
Right. So, so in my office, my staff are the best teachers of self-care to me. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic. They remind me to self-care. We definitely carve out, you know, I'm just from a workplace. We're always family first here. That's kind of our main rule is family first, and time for you is paramount. And so I'm really generous with time that they need, and time how they take care of themselves and support them in reaching their goals. But we do talk about goals as an organization. We start all of our staff meetings with something personally we're all working on, and we look for ways that we can encourage that in each other. But it's just, the name of the organization is Hugs. It kind of lends us just a little bit more to some of that kind of work and have it incorporated. And I think one of the reasons is because this isn't a job, it's kind of who you are here. And that's so it's just kind of a natural extension.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything else for Kim? We appreciate your message of self-care, especially at work. We, as an agency at NYCPG, are very conscious of self-care and care for each other and making sure everybody's well. So we appreciate that. You can reach out to us anytime with any questions you have to NYCPG or one of our problem gambling resource centers. And our 2022 conference will hopefully be face-to-face in Albany on March 9th and 10th. So write your calendars down. Thanks everybody for spending your week with us. I hope it was time well spent for you. I know it was time well spent for us. I have a few folks in the room with us. So thanks for hanging out with us, and I hope everybody has a wonderful Friday tomorrow. I can't wait to hear what you all do with the information you learned. So thanks.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thanks, Kim. This was great.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it was a good way to wrap up for sure.